This is the city we call our own. These are the stories of the people we call our neighbors. This is the heartbeat of our hometown. Naperville, this is Real Talk. All right, welcome back to Naperville Real Talk. This is the October monthly market update for your real estate market here in Naperville. I'm Chris Grano with Keller Williams, and as always, my monthly co-host is Todd Gosden with Compass Mortgage. Todd, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm good. Todd is battling through some echo over there on his end, so he's going to do his best for us today. Technology doesn't always cooperate with us, but you know, Todd, we're coming into the fall. We got Halloween coming up, or we're well into fall, I should say. And, you know, I think this is always a time of year when people have conversations about what's going on with real estate. I think in a couple ways. I think people kind of look back at the market from the spring and the summer, and then they look towards maybe end of this year or next year. I think a lot of people, they do their planning for the following year around now, you know, because you've got holidays coming up. So people start to think to themselves, do I need to make a move? You know, like, do we have some things coming up in the next few months or the next year that it would be a better scenario for me if I were in a different home, if I were in a different location? And I'm having a lot of those conversations right now with buyers who are just really planning for next year. And I think that's I think it's a great mindset to have, to evaluate things, to leave yourself enough time. And you and I kind of harp on that all the time, is get ahead of things, right? Don't try to rush at the last minute.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that's part of the process, right? Is I think the more you're ahead of the curve in the process, the less emotion gets involved.
That's right. So if you're kind of thinking towards that, but you have that little brain, voice in your brain saying, "Oh, that's so far off." No, you don't have to think it's so far off. It's really not. Just, that's just kind of my little encouragement as we start the episode, is just kind of plan ahead. No matter what type of market is, if you're thinking in your head that you might be wanting to do something in the world of real estate, even if that's investing. I got a text from a client yesterday. Hey, Chris, we're looking at our investment portfolio, and my wife and I are going to sit down this fall and talk about where we want to be in 10 years. Well, that's a great conversation to have. And
it sure is.
For this couple, they're looking at, do we want to work real estate investing into that? So I think in life, if you're going to be a planner, I think things are generally going to work out a little bit better for you.
I couldn't agree more. Well, and we even have clients that are planning a year in advance. They're looking out to go, how do I prepare myself today so when I am ready to go, I can actually put in an offer? And that's usually how it leads to winning.
That's right. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's like, Boy Scouts, right? Be prepared.
Be prepared.
So,
Nice
all right. So we're going to talk about a couple topics today. As always, we're going to talk about the Naperville real estate market. We'll get into some of the numbers. And then Todd and I want to spend a little time. It's been a little while since we kind of touched on just some general topics. Today, we want to talk about the importance of those partners inside of the real estate transaction. So if you think about the major players, let's say you're a buyer. The major players inside of that real estate transaction for you are going to be, of course, your real estate agent, your mortgage lender, your attorney, your inspector. And so you want to make sure that all these people are the best people you can have. How do you do that? Right. So we're going to talk about how you do that, right? And so first, let's just kind of dive in. So Naperville, we talked about the last few years. Obviously, it's been a crazy time in real estate. And if you can go back and watch the September and previous updates if you want to kind of hear what we've been going through over the course of this year. But I wanted to use this point here in October to go back, kind of look year by year to give you a big picture. Okay.
Can't wait.
Yes. And so here's the thing. So from the last available data was September, right? Last month. Yeah. So from last year, we had a median sale increase. All right. So median prices in Naperville, home values, increased by 9.1%. So that's still a huge increase, right? Let's compare that to the previous years. So 11% increase the year before. And then the year before that was really prior to kind of in the middle of COVID, right? So 19 and 20, we had a 5% increase. Prior to that, only a 0.5% increase. And from 17 to 18, a 3% increase. If you go back and look at the 10-year annualized returns from 2012 to 2022, it's kind of funny how this works, Todd. You're probably going to laugh and familiar familiarity with this number, 3.976% annualized returns in home value increases from 2012 to 2022, right on the 4% national average in home value
That's right.
increases. So even though we had these crazy couple of years in the last few years where home values jumped up, all that did was correct us from the decrease we saw in the market crash of 0809. And we're right back on track on that 4% increase. So
isn't it interesting?
it sure is, right? And welcome back normal. And it's kind of nice. So I think, for people who look at the real estate market or even the stock market as like gambling, I would encourage you to go back and look at long-term averages, right? Even the stock market, right? We're not giving stock advice on this podcast. Neither one of us are financial investment professionals. However, if you go back and just look, you're going to see that the long-term averages of the stock market are more predictable than you think they are. And it's the same thing in real estate. So certainly if you zoom down and you go year by year, there's volatility. But long-term, if anybody out there is questioning whether real estate investment is a good idea, there's nothing to question.
Zero. Statistically, it's been proven since the 1800s.
That's right. That's a pretty good sample size, I would say.
It's true, though. It's just the way it is. I mean, it's the most consistent, greatest wealth-building investment in the world.
That's right. And you can become familiar with it. Stocks. Maybe there's a bit more of a learning curve there, but you have real estate and financial professionals available to you all the time. You can get comfortable with this and learn about how to protect your investment, keep your home in its premium condition, that sort of thing. So what I wanted to do too, Todd, though, is look at the change. Okay, so that's a year over year. And I think some people's argument might say, all right, well, you're incorporating all of the early part of 22 when the market was still white hot. So I just kind of want to look at that argument, and we'll say, all right, so let's just look at the last 3 months. The last 3 months were when we probably saw more volatility in mortgage rates. We saw more, we saw maybe some not so great economic news for the country and the world. So we always see a decrease in median home values during that period of time between July and September because of seasonality, right? The seasonality. So this year we had a 5.4% decrease. Previous year we had a 4% decrease. 2020 we didn't see that because of COVID, right? 2020 we almost saw an increase because there was nothing happening during the height of the lockdowns. But if you go back another few years, 2.8, 3.7. So we are really not we are not way beyond, certainly not outside the standard deviation of the percent change for seasonality. So again, good news for anybody who thinks we're going to see like a huge crash in home values. I just don't see it. We could see some stagnation. We could see a fluctuation up or down by a little bit, but I just don't see a big crash coming. A couple more things before we kind of get into our topic. Todd, I think a lot of folks are wondering where are the homes at? Where's the inventory at? There's good news around that as well. I mean, so if you take a look at the amount of homes for sale between April and September, in terms of, what is there an increase or is there a decrease? Well, April is usually the height of the market, right? And so usually things are happening very quickly in April, and September things start to slow down a little bit. So inventory builds. Well, we're up 19% in inventory since April of this year. And that's the highest amount in the last 5 years. So for buyers who are saying, where's the inventory? Well, it's starting to come. So that's good news.
Sure is.
Overall, we're still at lower levels historically, and that's going to take some time to turn that ship around. So there's no getting around that. One thing I will say for sellers is you've got to realign your expectations. And I'm having those kind of conversations with folks all the time right now. Just look at showings. When we look at the same time period, April through September, we typically see a decrease again in showings per listing per month between April and September because of activity. In the last 5 years, that average has been about a 35% decrease from April to September, average number of showings per listing. This year, however, 60% decrease.
Oh,
So for sellers who are saying my neighbor sold for, sold in March, sold in April, they had showings all weekend, they had dozens of offers. That's not reality anymore. And that's very clear. So it's still a great time to sell because values are still high. And now that things are calming down a little bit, if you're going to buy after you sell, there's more for you to look at. So don't
right.
discount selling. It's still a great time to do it, but you just got to say, okay, I think you've said this before, Todd. We lived in an auction house for the last couple of years, and now the auction house doors are closed, and we're back to just a normal real estate market.
Right. Well, and actually, this market allowed us to reset to the correct 4% year over year growth rate because we had those years of 12, 13, 14, 15, where we had a swell in the market and we needed to catch up to get back on track. And that's what this did. The market will always correct itself to be back to level. Just well, just well.
And there's no, you've got to get your information from the right places, right?
That's right.
That's why we do this podcast. And hey, if you have a disagreement, I've had it. I've seen people comment, "Oh, I don't think that's right." Hey, that's fine. You can challenge our assertions, but just make sure you're getting it from, number one, local sources, because real estate is local. So if you're trying to,
Yep.
hear what's going on in New York, it has nothing to do with what's going on here. Even what's going on in the city of Chicago has not a lot to do with what's going on in the city of Naperville.
Well, and all the numbers are statistically proven. I mean, it's not like we're being made up.
Right. Exactly. You can argue it, but you won't be successful.
Yes.
All right. So Todd, let's kind of shift then and get out of the nerdy stuff, and let's talk about just kind of, even though you and I like the nerdy stuff.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I think let's talk about the home buying experience, and this applies to sellers too. But I think we'll talk about the home buying experience because it involves a few more pieces of the game than selling a
Correct.
home does, and you can have a wildly different experience from one buyer to the next. And I think the majority of that is driven by who you work with in the process. Would you agree with that?
Sure does. No, it does. I mean, here's what I would say is that I think where people go wrong sometimes is that you want to make sure you're in alignment with someone. In alignment is someone who's not going to is going to look out for your best interest, not just the sale of something, number one, but also your personality too, right? I mean, there's value in talking to someone who has genuine interest in what you want to do. We deal with this all the time in our world, right? Is that the sum of the five people you surround yourself with typically are the ones who are going to carry you through things. And I think that's where it's difficult sometimes with clients is whether it's you, an attorney, insurance agent, lender, whatever it is, you're looking for the relationship that you're comfortable with because obviously everything in my world, the appraisal world, the real estate world, it's all regulated. And I think that's the misnomer is I got to go see who has the best. Well, it's not about the best because it's all the same. Right. So you got to find the person that you're most comfortable with.
That's right. I mean, especially if you're talking the same in terms of quality, right? Listen,
Correct.
I am not the only good real estate agent in Naperville. Shocking news, I know, but there are plenty of good real estate agents in Naperville and in the Chicago
We
suburbs.
got to put that up for vote.
Yeah, and you can go talk to them, and that's fine. And of folks of the same caliber, and I'm talking folks who do this full time, who sell 30, 40, 50 homes a year. Of folks of that caliber, you ought to get the similar services from those people, right? But the experience could be very different. Same thing with you, right? Of a lender of your caliber and your quality, you're going to get similar services. You're going to get, like you said, it's not like somebody's going to go to you and get a rate for 2.5 and go over to somebody else and get a rate for 9.7. I mean, in other words, all things being equal, those things are going to be relatively similar, but the experience could be completely different, positive or negative, right?
100%. I mean, that's why it's so important to actually have a conversation. And a lot of times, believe it or not, the best referral source is someone who's already used somebody. Because your clients who used you, they're going to tell them about you, right? And I think, and if you don't know someone, You can interview other people to find that person, but I always tell people, at least in our world, rate is driven by how much you're willing to pay in cost, because an interest rate's like a stock. It moves up and down all day. So at the moment it's purchased, it's the same for everybody. So you're not hunting interest rate, you're hunting personality.
That's right. And I love what you said. You're perfectly, almost like I set you up, even though I didn't. You're leading me into referrals. And here's what I would say.
Right.
Of the folks I talk to, I would say 75 to 80% of them begin their home buying journey with a real estate agent. I would say the other percent probably begin with a mortgage lender. I would say most people don't begin with attorneys or inspectors. They come later in the process. So for the vast majority of my clients who reach out to me as their first point of contact, and we sit down and talk about partners in the process, I'm always making recommendations to them, referrals to them, of people that I know and trust and have had great experiences with. And here's why this is important. I think especially if you're going to start with the real estate agent, whoever your agent is, number one, you've got to trust that person, right? If you don't trust that person, you're in a world of hurt. You got to start the trust somewhere. And then if you trust that person, follow their recommendations, follow their referrals, because yes, you might have friends one friend says, well, Chris Grano's a great agent, use him. So you listened to them and you came to me. But that friend might say, well, Joe Schmo at such and such mortgage company is great, you should use them. My recommendation would be start with the person that you trust the most and then get their recommendations. And here's why. I deal with, again, 30, 40, 50 home sale transactions per year. You as a buyer probably deal with one every 5 to 10 years. Okay? So you might have had a good experience 8 years ago, and I'm not telling you can't use someone that you used 8 years ago. Your friend might have had a good experience a few years ago, but I know the people that I quote unquote trust my life with, and I know I can guarantee you a smooth or a smoother process if you listen to me and make those recommendations. And when you say, like, Todd, I'll give you an example. I mean, so Todd and I, there's no secret. Todd and I work together all the time, and there's accountability, right? Because we work together, we want to do a good job for each other and each other's clients. And so if you're just kind of diddy bopping around and you're going to pick a realtor from here and a lender from here, an attorney from here, it's probably not going to go as smooth as it could. Does that make sense?
Well, and I think those who work with us also work with the attorneys that we know and the inspectors we know and the appraisers we know, because we're all in sync and on alignment with one another. That makes the best team for you.
That's right. And it's not, when we say we know them, right? It's not like a good old boys club or something like, oh, I'm trying to get my friend some business. But far from it. It's the people that I trust. If I'm going to send you to a mechanic, the mechanic is going to source parts from the part place that he knows is going to deliver the parts on time and in quality. And he might source out the tire work, if he doesn't do the tire work, to a tire place that's good. Why would a business owner work with people who don't serve their clients well? Right?
Correct.
So that's why I think it's incredibly important. And Todd, I'm going to just embarrass you for a second here, if you don't mind, just to give.
Okay.
But this is a conversation I have with buyers all the time. I spoke with 2 buyers last week at consultations, and I gave this example, and it's important. And so in real estate, again, my clients can work with whomever they want to. I'm certainly not telling anyone they're required to work with anyone to work with me. But one example I give on why partnerships are so important is Todd, a couple of years ago, you and I had a mutual client, and we were coming down to the wire, and there were some difficulties at the end that weren't your fault nor my fault, and it could have caused the transaction to go off the rails. Todd, you had a flight scheduled to Florida, if I remember correctly, for Thanksgiving to spend time with family. You canceled your flight to stay here and take care of that issue for our mutual client because it was that important to you. And so I always tell that story when I meet with buyers, because I can promise you that Susie from Big Bank located in California isn't going to do that for you.
Well, it's very nice of you to say, but it is important to us, both of us, because we're trying to provide an experience and a service to someone that can be very emotional. It's also most likely the biggest investment of their life, and we have to take it that seriously.
That's right. And you only know that um, from experience. You know,
That's right.
I can only share that by saying, hey, listen, I've worked with this person time and time again, they've delivered. So whoever you start your home buying journey with, whether it's the lender, whether it's the real estate agent, and it's fine if it's not Todd or myself, make sure you trust that person. Make sure you listen to their recommendations. And I think at the end of the day, you're going to find out you're going to have a much, much smoother experience all the way around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Todd, thank you.
Relationships.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you have a good
Thank
Halloween.
you.
Do you know what you're going to be for Halloween this year, Todd?
No, I'm working on that.
Well, I already know because my 5-year-old is determined that I'm going to be Spider-Man. So I'm
Oh,
furiously in the
nice.
gym over the next 2 weeks trying to get that Spider-Man
Buy
physique.
the suit with it already built into it.
All right, Todd, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for watching and listening. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you get notified about future episodes of this podcast when it comes available. Make sure you go and check out the most recent episode of Naperville Real Talk featuring Karen Miller of EV Photography, located right here in Naperville. That's one you definitely don't want to miss, especially if you're an aspiring entrepreneur. And make sure to follow all of our content. You can find Todd and my info in the show notes below, and we'll see you guys next month.
See everybody.